What if everything you've been told about stress management and finding peace is actually keeping you stuck in survival mode? It may be keeping you from burning out, but it's also probably keeping you from truly thriving and enjoying your life. I thought I knew what flow meant, and then I got a tumor diagnosis. And let me tell you, through that experience, I realized I was not thriving. I was simply surviving. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard. I went from being a lawyer and partner at one of the largest firms in America to becoming an online personality and successful entrepreneur. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your health and personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you chase joy while achieving success? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back to Hustle and Flow. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and we are on episode 248, Beyond Burnout, from surviving to thriving. I am so excited to share this episode with you today because there is just so much talk about overwhelm and how to avoid burnout. And I'm just here to say that is not the goal. That is not the goal. That is a minimum. And for over 10 years, I thought that was the goal. I thought I was doing great. But then after I had the tumor and went through a time where I had no outlets, I could not burn out. I was not doing anything. I was just on sabbatical. I was like, why am I so unhappy? Like, there is no joy in my life. And that's when I realized that all of those stress management tools, they help you survive, which again, you need, but they don't help you thrive. And so today I want to share with you how you can transition from just surviving to actually thriving. Now, before we get into the episode, I just want to ask, did you attend yesterday's masterclass? It was called Why Successful Women Feel Lost and How to Find Your Way Back. If you attended, it was so good to see you there. I'm actually recording this before that's ever happened. But if I saw you there, truly, I am excited that you showed up. If you missed it, the replay is still available through June 24th. So go check it out at heatherjoyhubbard.com/masterclass. Like I mentioned, it's only available for one more week. So go check it out. And if you have not heard the big news, if you have not heard the announcement that I can't fully share publicly, go check it out. It's at heatherjoyhubbard.com/announcement. Okay, let's get into the episode. So I think working women have probably struggled with stress and anxiety and burnout more than men, since as long as they've actually been allowed in the workplace. So many women not only are trying to prove themselves without the same amount of tools and connections and resources at work, and they're having to often do more of the heavy lifting and the load with the family. There are a lot of stats out there on that. I know that's not the case for everyone. I know that for many generations, it's getting better and better. And we know that Gen Z is, the men in Gen Z are like more wrapped up in toxic masculinity than ever before. So I think there was like this sweet spot, maybe like for millennials. So who knows what's happening? But my point is, women are getting it from like every single end, like every end, every angle. Like it's just, it never stops. It is so easy to be completely overwhelmed and exhausted all of the time. Add on to that, women's rights are being stripped away. Add on to that, political chaos. Add on to that, the fact that as I age, a lot of you age as well. And that means that you are now dealing with children at home and potentially aging parents. You have now become part of the sandwich generation. You are exhausted. You are overwhelmed and you are running on empty. Now, because of this, there has been a lot of talk over the years. I think wellness within industries and companies, it has been mainstream enough now that there are occasionally workshops and conversations. But the truth is, at the end of the day, most companies, most corporations, especially in male dominated industries, which is most industries, they still really don't understand and have not fully addressed the lack of balance and the complete burnout that so many women face. And so I thought I would share a little bit about my story. There are kind of three different parts, and it'll be interesting to hear which ones you relate to because some of you still very well may be where I was pre 2011. Some of you might be where I was 2011 to 2020. And then maybe, hopefully, some of you are actually where I have been for, I don't know, the last 2 or 3 years. So all I ever wanted to do was be really successful, really powerful, really rich. When I went to law school, I thought I was going to be this big, powerful, rich lawyer. And I had so much to prove. I mean, I've been proving myself since I was a young child. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that, right? Like, just I've always been achieving. And it really wasn't that big of a deal. I was in every extracurricular activity, doing all of the AP classes, also doing college classes, figuring out all the applications on my own. I mean, when I grew up, there was no such thing as a helicopter parent. My parents did not help me identify or tour schools. They did not help me with my applications. None of that. Like, you just did that stuff on your own if you were interested. Your parents were not involved. So it was just all exciting. And I was willing to work hard because I knew what I wanted. I knew it was going to pay off. I didn't really complain or talk about being stressed out or anxious. I remember studying for the bar. I was actually really stressed out and anxious. That was probably the first time I was just like, I'm overextended. But I think that actually had more to do with just fear that I was going to fail the bar. I was just stressed out. But the overwhelm, that didn't really happen, I don't think, for me until I became a lawyer. And it was when I became a lawyer that I feel like I lost so much autonomy and maybe even parts of my identity. It felt a little bit like I was back home growing up when I was not allowed to do what I wanted and I had to get permission, right? Like, I had to go to school and I had to have permission to not be there. And even if my parents or the teachers, mostly my parents, were being completely ridiculous, I had to do it anyway because they were putting the roof over my head. And suddenly I kind of felt like I was in that same position when I was in the law firm because, I worked for people who, like my parents, were being ridiculous, completely insane. What they were saying made no sense. And I had no choice because they were putting a roof over my head. So unless I was going to leave that job, I had to work with it. Not only that, it's a different dynamic. I wanted to excel. I wanted to succeed. And so it became more about strategy. It became more about how do you deal with these difficult personalities? How do you prove yourself? How do you work hard? How are you seen as a rock star? Like, how do you do all these things? And that firmly put me in workaholic territory where, in so many ways, I just gave up on any sense of my own well-being. And that I mean that in every sense of the word. Like, just from food to moving my body to having fun to constantly being in my head to being in, frankly, toxic relationships, potentially codependent relationships with people at work, working all the time, always coming home late, never having dinner at a normal time, never fully being present with conversations. Every single trip I took, I remember my very first trip that I took. I mean, I was within my first year, and I had a boss who was just so mad at me for something. And I now can look back at it and know that he was actually manipulating me and training me to know that I can't leave, that I had to, like, I needed to be in the office. He didn't want me going on trips. But I felt like I had to show up the way that he needed and wanted me to show up. And I know a lot of you have experienced this with abusive colleagues, bosses, clients, and you feel like it's just what you got to do. Working all hours of the day and night, feeling like it's what you got to do. Going on vacation or just the weekend or at night, feeling like you constantly have to be available on your phone 24/7. The number of people who would get mad if I didn't respond like quickly, and they would get really, really mad, right? It was completely acceptable and okay to be a tyrant in our industry. And I just thought that's part of it. Like this is what it is. I never took unplugged vacations. And by the way, when I say like people would get upset at me, it was because I was not available for like 4 or 5 hours, right? I mean, it wasn't like I want off grid for even 24 hours, but they wanted me accessible all the time. When I would go on vacation, which was often hard because especially when you're working for lots of different people, whether it's different partners, but of course you can take that on as partner mode. It's then all the clients, like you can never let anyone down. You can never make anyone upset because someone else will be happy to take their work. And it's like, there comes a point when you're like, let them take the work, have this client. But at the time, I would go on these trips and I was constantly working, and it would drive anyone who I was, on this trip with crazy that I would not be present. And I thought, you all just don't get me. Like, you don't understand my industry. You don't get me. I then had the year where everything just went wrong. And this was 2010. I had a stress fracture. My marriage was, we were about to get a divorce. My husband had a raging addiction, and I was working insane hours. And then my sister died, and I had a breakdown, as you do when that many things pile up. And I know so many of you can relate to this because you've had those moments where, you had that breakdown. And so during that time, I don't know that I had a lot of peace or joy. I had ambition, baby. And that was it. That was what I was living for. And so maybe that's where you are now. If so, you were probably, if you were starting to feel those cracks, you're in a lot of pain. And I've been there. A lot of the other people listening have been there. And it is very, very common, especially early in your career. The key is to not get stuck in that place. So that's how I came to being in a place where I was like, I need help. And I didn't know what that help looked like because no one was really talking about it. There weren't really resources available. And so I kind of went on a bit of an exploration, a journey to find myself, to figure out what was going to make me feel happy and whole again. And so I tried so many different modalities, and one which totally changed my life, and I still am a fan, was mindfulness. Mindfulness completely transformed how I approach life. It allowed me to be so much calmer. It allowed me to be less reactive. It allowed me to not take things as personally. It allowed me to just really create space with my thoughts and allow me to just calm the fuck down. You know what I mean? Just for a little bit, like I could just calm down. And I had tools and techniques that allowed me to do that more or less on demand. I started practicing a little bit more spirituality. I was in some 12-step groups where I learned other just super, super helpful concepts that were completely life-changing, that allowed me to, stop trying to fix everybody else, really allowed me to just stay in my own lane. And I wasn't doing all the ruminating that I was doing. I wasn't doing all the future tripping. I wasn't constantly, either living through the past, going through a story like, how could I have changed this, going through this mistake, or worried about this conversation or what was going to happen. Like, I was just able to be more present. I started practicing yoga again. And I was meditating. I was just able to experience a lot more serenity. And then in 2014, so this was a few years in, it was a process. It did not happen overnight. I took some classes on boundaries. That was interesting. That was really interesting. Then in 2014, I took my first unplugged vacation. I did not take my phone with me. And I was certain that I would come back and not have a job. But I had prepared everything. I actually did an episode on this a long time ago about vacations and how to actually prep to take a vacation. But I fully unplugged for, I think it was like 10 days or 2 weeks. And everything was fine. Everybody took care of things. No big deal. And while I was away, like that was the first time that I had really had space to think, to not be right. Like, because let me tell you, when you are in what I was talking about, and you might still be there, like every little ping or email that comes in or text message, you're like, oh shit, what is that? What is that? Right? Like, because you think it's going to be another emergency or another toxic person. It's just always something. And that could even be family related, right? It's just always something. It's like, I just want a break. I just want a break. And so from 2011 to 2020, I was meditating. I was teaching meditation. I was practicing mindfulness. Oh my gosh, I became the queen of boundaries, letting people do their own thing, not giving a shit what people thought of me. Truly, I made so much progress. And when I started this company in, end of 2014, beginning of 2015, the mantra has always been hustle and flow. So even though this podcast did not debut until 2017, the hustle and flow mantra has been there since day one. That was it was always on the website. It was, are you interested in hustle? Are you interested in flow? Because both were so important to me. That flow had saved my life. It had changed my life. I had the 7 steps. I don't know if y'all have grabbed the guide now that it's been redone. It looks great. I thought I was in flow. I was like, this is it. This is wonderful. I was still working all the time. My husband said I was working even more. I don't think that's possible. But basically where like I worked in my home, he was just like, you never shut off. Like you're always thinking, like you're always worried. Like maybe with like social media or this, like it was just always like, are we on top of this? I worked all the time, but I was practicing all of my tools, all of my techniques. And so I was like, yeah, I've got balance. This is great. And it did. It felt like balance. Totally felt like balance. And then I had the tumor diagnosis and eventually had to go on a sabbatical. And at that point, none of my meditation or mindfulness techniques were working. The emotional regulation techniques they weren't working because of all the cortisol and my pituitary. Like they just weren't working because everything was so out of control. But I was able to do therapy and I still practice all of my modalities, and it allowed me to be in a place of surrender, and it allowed me to be in a place of acceptance. And I had never been more present in my life. You know, Eckhart Tolle often talks about like being able to just sit on a bench and be content. And that's what I had to learn to do. I remember sitting on our back patio and I was one with the hummingbirds. We have these hummingbirds that would visit and they would just perch up on the little wire. They were there all the time. It was just me and the hummingbirds. Me and the hummingbirds and the deer, trees and the flower. And for many of you, you're probably like, that sounds fabulous. But let me tell you, when that's all you have day in and day out, at least for me, it was not fabulous. I was bored to tears. I wanted to be doing other things. My body hurt a lot. So I wanted to be able to go out and do things that it didn't feel good to do. I had so much social anxiety at the time. Like I didn't enjoy being around people. I was depressed. Like it was just a bad situation for so many different reasons. And I was just like, I'm using the tools as best I can. And technically I have peace, right? Like there's clearly no burnout. I'm not stressed. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm doing fucking nothing, people. Like nothing. I'm present. I'm doing nothing. I was like, this isn't living. This isn't living. That's just surviving. And the ambition and the doing. And by the way, I love what I do, right? So there is joy attached to that. But when that is your source of joy, right? Like when the relationships and the job are like your only source of joy, like you don't have anything outside of that, those stress management tools and techniques, the emotional regulation, the mindfulness, the meditation, the yoga, all those things, like they're just keeping you from burning out. They're helping you find some peace, but you're lacking joy. You're lacking deep satisfaction. You're lacking a level of happiness that you could be experiencing. And because so many of us really don't know what that would actually look like as an adult because we're just busy all the time. When I was coming out of the sabbatical, and again, I had nothing going on, I had to figure out, well, like, as I was saying last week, who am I? What do I want? What will make me happy again? I had been so sad and so isolated for so long. I was just like, how do I find my happiness? How do I find my joy? And that's when I realized we've got to move beyond burnout. We've got to move beyond burnout. The conversation cannot just be about burnout because we deserve so much more than peace. We deserve joy. We deserve joy. And joy comes from wonder. Joy comes from curiosity. Joy comes from adventure. Joy comes from expression. Joy comes from spontaneous surprises, doing things you normally wouldn't do. Joy comes from things completely different than what peace comes from. And I didn't get that. I was missing that. The whole time I've been talking about hustle and flow, I was missing that piece of the equation. And ever since I have, as I've been coming back off the tumor, but really centering my joy, and then the peace and the ambition, all of that goes around it. I've never been happier. I'm having the absolute time of my life. And I really wish that it would not have taken a tumor for me to realize this. And so, for those of you listening who use all the modalities and the stress management techniques, and it does help you, right? Like it has changed your life. You might be squarely in phase 2. You're like, compared to phase 1, life changed. But if you are not fully experiencing joy and happiness and wonder regularly, I want you to know there's another phase. And you deserve to explore that as well, because it's really just going to take your life and even your career to the next level. So I have 3 questions for you today that are going to help you explore maybe what phase you're in, but also give you an idea of some of the things that you can do to learn more about each. Okay. My first question for you is, when was the last time you unplugged and stopped thinking? When was the last time you unplugged and stopped thinking? So this means not by the phone, not by the computer, not by the TV, right? Like I'm talking about all of your electronic devices. Like you're unplugged. No one can reach you. You are not accessible. Obviously, there's emergency situations, but you know what I mean? Like you are truly unplugged and you're not thinking, like you're not trying to fix it. So you're not out for a walk. listening on your pods and you're not thinking through a solution. So even if you're out walking with a friend, if you're like talking about your problems or you're complaining about something or any of that, like you're still thinking. So when was the last time you unplugged and stopped thinking? It's very important to do that regularly. It provides perspective and can help you get out of that spiral. I regularly do that. In fact, Saturday, a few days ago, I noticed that I was in my head and I was getting just a little wound up. And I was like, when was the last time I unplugged and paused and stopped thinking? I was like, that's what you need to do. And so that's what I did. And it helped. Okay. Question number 2. When was the last time you intentionally meditated, practiced mindfulness, or regulated your nervous system in order to calm your body and mind? So this goes beyond unplugging to actually practicing some kind of stress management technique or tool, right? So when was the last time you meditated, practiced mindfulness, tried to regulate your nervous system to calm your body and mind? By the way, a spa day would work on that. That would be one of the ways you could regulate your nervous system. There's so many different modalities, tools, techniques. But that's a great question. Are you doing those things? If not, that's a great opportunity. And then number 3, when was the last time you had fun? When was the last time you experienced pure joy, wonder, laughter, adventure? When was the last time you experienced that? I think your answer to those questions is going to give you a lot of information about which phase you might be in and where you have opportunities to lean more into the chance to find more peace or to find more happiness and joy. So my hope is that we can all move beyond burnout, beyond surviving, and truly thrive, because it's some next level fun. Now, look, life's still going to life. Like shit still happens. But it's a lot better when you're centering joy. Truly, it's fantastic. As I mentioned, if you missed the replay, go check it out. Well, if you missed the live masterclass yesterday, go check out the replay, which is all about why so many successful women feel lost and how to find your way back. Go check that out. You're going to love it. And then also, heads up that you have 1 week left to apply for the next Joy in the Journey retreat at Mirabal. So we're going to be there September 28th through October 1st. And let me tell you, you are going to unplug. It is a digital-free environment. You can still have your phone in your room, so you're not, you don't have to be completely unplugged, but you're going to be unplugged in a way you never have before. And because everyone there is also unplugged, it's a phenomenal experience that I've personally not been able to experience anywhere else. And it is a mindfulness property. So it is just truly, there's so many ways and opportunities to practice those mindful techniques to truly unplug. You are going to feel so rested, so relaxed, so nourished. You're going to sleep so well, but we're going to go beyond that. We're going to help you thrive. There is adventure, there is joy, there is dancing. We do so much stuff. And when you are done, you walk away. Everybody, they're just like, I feel so much lighter. I didn't realize how much I needed this, how much I needed a break, and to really get back in touch with who I am and what I want, and really explore that joy again, to create more joy in the journey. So if you are interested in that, go apply. 1 week, you've got 1 week left to apply. heatherjoyhubbard.com/joy in the journey. All right. Have a great week. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, give the episode a like and leave a comment below so we can keep the conversation going. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a future episode or announcement. Listening on Apple, Spotify, or another podcast app, you can watch the video and join in the after show conversation by visiting hustleandflowpodcast.com.